Hello and welcome back. This is part 2 of the ESXi patching. What we're going to do is we're just going to work through each of these different steps in the patching process, and we'll do one and check it, move on, and there's several here. Okay, and these all come from that web article that is linked in Canvas and that was referenced in video part 1. And that's the URL for that up here. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to enable SSH on our ESXi server and then establish an SSH session to it and check the version number, the currently installed version of VMware. And this is the command to do that from an SSH session. So let's go do that. To enable SSH, you can do it here from the Manage. If you right-click on Manage and go to Services, and when you do it here, it's a temporary. So I'm going to enable it, and it'll be enabled until I either disable it or I reboot the server, and that works good. If you want to permanently enable it, you do that in a different place, but temporary is good for us. So the next thing I want to do then is open PuTTY and establish an SSH session. So I got PuTTY open and I type in my fully qualified domain name and I go ahead and click on open. The command then to check my current version is this. And I want to make note of this. This is when ESXi updates, it updates the build number. These are major releases, and these come out, well, it's usually maybe every 18 months or 24 months. But the builds typically they get released about every 3, 4, 5 months. So I want to make note of that because we're going to use that when we go to look at what the currently available patch is. So this is 20513097. Okay, so we're moving on to part 2, and we're going to go to this URL. If you haven't created an account yet with VMware, and I don't know that you have yet in our projects, but it's free to do, and you need to create an account in order to download patches. This is the same place that you go to get your free ESXi license or to download an evaluation of their enterprise server. Good thing to do then, if you haven't done so, to go ahead and create an account, and let's go to that URL and log in. Okay, so here we are, and from the drop-down list, it's an odd thing here, but we need to select ESXi embedded or installable versus ESX. So select that, and then pick your version. We're working with version 8, and then do a search, and it'll show you what the current patches are. What we're seeing then is that this is the current build, and it was released on this date. So we want to go ahead and download that. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, that brings us then to the next step here, and this is again reference to the article. What we're going to do is we're going to go to the web interface on our server, and we're going to create this directory, and I'll show you how to do that and on data store 1. And what we're doing is we're just following the steps in that article. So let's go do that. So we're over on our server. We're going to expand storage, and then right click and go to browse, and it'll browse the data store. You could also work with the data stores using WinSCP, or you can do it this way. I find that if you're working with just a file or two, that to do it in the web interface here works pretty good. If you're dealing with more than that, then WinSCP, WinSecureCopy, I think is a better way to go. But according to the article, we select Data Store 1. Now, Data Store 1 is a default. It was created at installation. We then go to Create Directory, and according to the article, we need to call it Patch Directory, lowercase. Next thing that we need to do then is we need to upload into that directory the patch. Now, what I like to do also is I want to make note of the name. And so this one starts VMware. And I just really need to know the first letter, and I'll show you why in just a minute. But notice that it has that same number, that this is the build 208-42819. So I want to upload that into this directory. Okay, so there it is. And if I slide over, the way that the file system works within ESXi is kind of this hierarchical. So you can see there's the patch. So I'm going to go ahead now and close this window, and I'm going to put my server into maintenance mode. I right click on it and I say enter maintenance mode. It's good to read this just to be aware. Then notice that when you're in maintenance mode, you get this triangle with the exclamation mark. On earlier versions of ESXi, it puts a different icon. It puts like this caution band across the front of this icon here, the server icon. Now, if following the steps, I need to, my next step is to SSH into the server, and I still have SSH turned on, and that tells me that right here, so I'm good to go. I'm going to then go back to PuTTY and get ready to apply the patch. So now we're to this step here. Open an SSH session on your server. And this is a really long syntax. This is actually the syntax that we're going to use, except for the file name part of it will be whatever our patch file is. And you can copy and paste this in. So I've got my SSH session open. I just didn't close it from when we got the build information earlier. I'm going to right click and paste it. And this is where you can use the tab key to autofill. I mean, it's a long path. And that's why I made note of what the name of the zip file was for the patch. You remember almost a moment ago in the video I said I'm going to make note of that it starts with VM, capital V. So I type in a capital V and I hit the tab key and it finishes out for me. So I'm going to go ahead and hit enter on this, and it's going to take just a bit. This is what the end result is, and it took about, I would say probably about 30 seconds. But what you like to do is you like to come up here, so just scroll up just a little bit and look for this. The update completed successfully. Whew, okay, kind of, breathe a sigh of relief. What we can then do is you could either from the graphical interface reboot the server, or you can just type in reboot. And I'll then pause the video, and the next thing I'll do is I'll go and log into my server once it's rebooted. Just a couple things to point out, and that's this right here. This, I often find, this is one way that sometimes you'll see people reference about how to find out what your build number is, but notice that's still the old number. And they're really the only accurate way to check the build numbers from the command prompt. So we're still in maintenance mode. I got my icon here. Let's go ahead and turn SSH back on. Notice that SSH did go off with the reboot, and that's the value of turning SSH on here rather than in services where you enable it. So I'm going to enable it, and then I'm going to go back and open PuTTY, and I'll see you there. Okay, back in PuTTY and logged in and issued the command, and this is good. This number should match what we downloaded for the patch from VMware. Okay, then the last thing to do is just to go in and exit maintenance mode, and we're done patching. Yay, way to go. All right, we'll wrap up this video.